This is Tom Gabriel, Warrior of Hellhammer, Celtic Frost, and Triptychon. And I'm very, very happy that Triptychon will play for the very first time in Colombia at Grita Fest in Marisales this coming weekend. We will play a cross-section of Celtic Frost and Triptychon, and we are looking forward to seeing as many as possible of you there. And you're watching Alejandro Ortiz show, which is the best show on this planet. Believe it. You there.
Celtic Frost es una de las agrupaciones más impactantes e influyentes en toda la historia del heavy metal. Lo que ese grupo suizo cimentó desde los años 80 ha tenido repercusiones hasta el día de hoy. En la primera década de los 2000, Celtic Frost se transformó en Triptychon, una banda que mantiene ese sonido vanguardista e inquietante con la perseverancia de su líder, el guitarrista y vocalista Thomas Gabriel Warrior. Ahora me complace saber que Triptychon debutará en Colombia como acto principal del Festival Grita, que se celebrará en Manizales los días 10, 11 y 12 de octubre. Para hablar del legado de Celtic Frost, del conjunto Hellhammer, que fue donde inició esta historia, y de este presente glorioso con Triptychon, vamos a conversar con el mismísimo Thomas Gabriel Warrior. Este es un capítulo muy especial para mí en Alejandrosis. Acompáñenme durante los siguientes minutos. Quiero invitarlos a suscribirse al canal de Alejandrosis, activar las notificaciones y si les gusta esta entrevista, nuestros contenidos, a que nos brinden un me gusta. Thomas Gabriel Warrior es un músico con una visión extraordinaria. Es muy difícil encasillar lo que ha hecho con sus bandas y si les mencionara aquí conjuntos que han sido influenciados de una u otra manera por Thomas Gabriel Warrior, pues nos tardaríamos horas. Es increíble que con la avalancha de bandas internacionales que nos han visitado en los últimos 20 años, pues no lo haya hecho Triptychon. Incluso Celtic Frost, que lanzó un último álbum por allá en el año 2006 bajo el título de Mono Taste. Y Triptychon ha lanzado 2 discos extraordinarios. Pero bueno, más vale tarde que nunca. Y qué chévere que sea ahí en el Festival Grita, que siempre es una plaza maravillosa, con una audiencia muy entregada en una ciudad muy linda. Partamos por ahí hablando con Tom, preguntándole acerca de qué expectativas tiene de tocar en Manizales, en Colombia, por primera vez.
I don't travel with expectations. We feel extremely honored to have been invited to Colombia. We don't go with expectations. I don't think we have the right to have any expectations. And if you are a band from Switzerland, and like me, if you have grown up in a tiny little village in Switzerland, it's not something you take for granted that you get to play in Colombia, that you get to be one of the headliners of a festival. It's an absolute honor. So we are going, for us, it's a pleasure to go. And we're trying the very best to play a very good concert for the very first time in Colombia. That's the attitude we are bringing.
Yeah, nice to hear that. It's curious and pleasant to see a band making their debut, not in Bogota, the capital, but also in another city like Manizales. And let me tell you, it's a beautiful city with big mountains. You
Right.
will. I hope you will enjoy the experience. What can you tell me? Maybe a preview of the repertoire, the songs.
Well, because it's our first time in Colombia, we decided to play a cross section from early Celtic Frost to current Triptychon. There will be material from the early Celtic Frost materials albums, and there will be material from the last Celtic Frost album, Monotheist, and there will also be music from the Triptychon albums, all the Triptychon studio albums. We are given 75 to 90 minutes, and we're trying to present a very good cross section of the most important music of our timeline.
Wonderful to hear that because it's a big legacy. It's a lot of albums, but most important, I think, is a lot of rhythms. Maybe for the people that will so this will see this interview. Maybe some people think, yeah, that's a heavy metal band, but it's not a heavy metal band. You combine with a beautiful songs and strong songs. Things like electronic elements, symphonic elements, gothic elements, even punk music. My first album, my first experience with your music, it's at the end of the 90s in the Colombian radio, in the public Colombian radio, some program put Mr. Lucho Barrera, an important speaker about heavy metal, he'll put your album into the pandemonium, right? I am in the school, and it blows me away the very first time when I hear it, because it's another kind of heavy metal. It's difficult, it's different, and maybe and also approach different types of audiences, you know, that like me, for example, in those times. I want to ask you about it. What give you the curious and the ability to start to put different elements in your music, not only in Celtic Frost, I think from the beginning when you are part of the important Hellhammer band?
Well, it's basically the music that we've all been listening to ourselves. It wasn't really a concept or a plan. We love heavy metal, of course. We loved heavy metal from the very beginning, and we loved extreme heavy metal. But we also listened, like you said, we listened to jazz and to classical and to new wave music, to hard rock, all kinds of things, 70s rock, prog rock. These were all the things that we loved as private people. And we never agreed with the concept that you should have a limitation. We always felt music is art, and art should be allowed to be experimental. Art should not adhere to artificial borders. Art should go wherever it wants to go. And we became heavy metal musicians to be outside of limitations, to not adhere to what politicians and teachers and society tells us. So why should we censor ourselves? So we simply combined the music that we loved, all the various directions of music that we loved, and the result is what you hear in Celtic Frost and in Triptychon.
Great, and it's a good bridge. What happens in the final album of Celtic Frost, Monotheist? There is the CD that I can buy in the moment that you release it as part of the legacy of Celtic Frost. But then you made Triptychon, and I think the music of both worlds, the final episode of Celtic Frost and the first episode of Triptychon, is not the same, but it plays in the same league. Are you agree?
In a way, it's the same. Of course, you cannot replace the people that were in Celtic Frost. But at the time, that was exactly the problem. I was very happy with the music of Celtic Frost after the reunion in the 2000s. But there was constant problems among the people in the band. There was a lot of lies, a lot of ego, a lot of intrigues behind the scenes, and it got to a point where we spent all our time arguing about things, and we no longer played music. We would meet at the rehearsal room, and instead of playing new songs or rehearsing old songs that we hadn't played live yet, we would spend hours just arguing, discussing things. And eventually I thought, I'm wasting all my energy on this instead of playing music. So I left the band and I formed a new band, Triptychon, to continue exactly what I had done in Celtic Frost, but maybe on a slightly more professional level without all of the personal distractions. And a lot of the Triptychon material is material that I wrote for Celtic Frost. So I personally don't really see a musical difference. The two Triptykon albums, studio albums so far, and also the Requiem, these are all things that I would have done in Celtic Frost exactly the same. And even on the new album that we are working on right now, there's material that I've written for Celtic Frost 15 years ago or so. So it's different people. It's maybe a little more professional, but to me, musically, artistically, it's very, very close to Celtic Frost. That was the intention from the beginning.
Okay, and it's a great news. Thank you for sharing me that. You are in this moment in the process of writing the music, or are you recording for next Triptykon album?
We are meeting regularly to do songwriting. We are doing demos in our rehearsal room, and then take the demos home and work on them, like writing lyrics, writing harmony guitars, working on the arrangements. And still, I have a list of songs that are not finished yet that I'm going to finish in the next few months and I'm going to bring to the rehearsal room, to the band. So we're in the middle of creating the album, and as soon as we feel we have enough material, we go to the studio and record them properly. But we have plenty of demo material, and we are playing the songs in the rehearsal room. And I mean, it sounds stupid if I say it, but to me, it sounds very much like Triptykon. And so far, I'm very happy.
¡Wow! Tremenda chiva. Ahí está, un nuevo álbum de Triptykon viene en camino. Recordemos que esta banda tiene dos producciones en el mercado. Un debut del año 2010, fascinante, de verdad, me gusta mucho. Paristera Daimones. Y 4 años más adelante tendríamos Melana Chasmata. Así que, bueno, qué bien que la inspiración se mantenga. Con respecto a la alineación, al grupo que vamos a tener en Manizales, pues está Tom Warrior en guitarra y voz, acompañado de B. Santura en la otra guitarra, en el bajo está Vanja Sla y en la batería Hannes Grossman. A continuación, hablamos de la estabilidad que ha mostrado en sus filas Triptykon.
This goes back to what we talked about earlier, to some of the problems we had in Celtic Frost. Triptykon is very different in that we are a very stable band. Triptykon has been together for 17 years now, and in these 17 years, we never once had a fight. And in Celtic Frost, we were constantly arguing. We had constant negative discussions. So the lineup in Triptykon is very stable. They're very, very good people, very good friends of mine. We all basically feel like a family. The only lineup change we had was when Hannes Grossman joined us as a drummer in 2018. And that was actually a friendly lineup change. Our previous drummer, Norman Lawnhart, simply wanted to play some different music. He wanted to play more prog rock music, things like that. And it was actually a very harmonic lineup change, and we're still friends with our old drummer. So Triptykon is a very stable band, and I'm especially very proud to play with V. Santura, who's an absolutely excellent guitar player and a very good sound engineer who has his own studio where we record all our things. It's an absolute honor to be on stage with him.
Hablábamos al inicio de este video de la enorme influencia de Tom Warrior, ya sea con Triptykon, con Celtic Frost, con Hellhammer, en un montón de bandas, en infinidad de grupos, de proyectos. Yo, por ejemplo, soy fanático de Nirvana y he leído que Kurt Cobain, cuando andaba en una humilde van por los Estados Unidos, escuchaba grabaciones como Into the Pandemonium ahí en la casetera de esa camioneta. Y si quieren un ejemplo más reciente y más próximo al metal pesado, pues vimos a Behemoth en la Movistar Arena bajándose un gran show, y uno escuchándolos ahí con atención pues detecta sombras, huellas de lo que ha sido ese legado de Celtic Frost, sobre marcar la ruta, ser una figura predominante en la música. Tom Warrior, con muchísima humildad, contesta lo siguiente.
I can't really comment on that. It's not my place to comment on whoever I might or might not have influenced. That would be very arrogant. You know, Behemoth is a band I respect, and I saw actually that they were playing in Colombia. It was quite a big concert that they played, and they're very good friends of ours. Also, Visantura also worked on their last album, so there's a lot of connections between the two bands. But I can't really comment on any influences, you know.
Okay, I got it. 40 years ago in 98, 85, right? Your first album, To Megatherium, came out, and a couple of months before that, the Emperor's Return EP, amazing, by the way. If it's possible, Mr. Tom, would really, do you like maybe to share with us some memories about this couple of production? What is was writing and the studios that you choose, and maybe the results that you saw at the end of the day?
Well, the most important thing about Empire's Return EP and To Megatherium album is that these are the first recordings with a full lineup when we found our American drummer Reed St. Mark at the time, who joined the band in February 1985. Before that, we didn't have a complete lineup, and our first album, Morbid Tales, was recorded with a studio drummer. And we were looking for months for a drummer that would fit Celtic Frost. And then by coincidence, met Reed St. Mark, and him joining the band really changed everything. He was a very, very experienced drummer. He was older than Martin, Eric Kane, and me. He had a lot of experience because he came from New York. We were just provincial Swiss musicians, very young, without any experience. And Reed St. Mark came, and it changed the band dramatically. Martin and I had to work very hard to become more professional, to be able to play with Reed St. Mark. And I think you can hear that development on these records. It really helped us to step one step higher with the music and with the quality of our production. And of course, then what we didn't know at the time is that To Megatherium would become one of our key albums. It was a very difficult production because the sound engineer who did the album had a lot of personal problems, which unfortunately made recording with him very difficult. But at the end of the day, I think we're very happy with To Megatherium. It's a very, very important album for the band, and it's probably one of the most important albums in my life that I've been a part of.
Wow, nice to hear that. And as I said, Into the Pandemonium was the record that I discovered your music. I hear that album first in the radio, then on CD, and it's a constant album in my hearings opinion. You know, in my hearings favorite choices. It's in my playlist. It's close to me. But I want to ask you about when I hear songs like maybe Mesmerize or Babylon Fell, or even the cover that you did, the Mexican radio cover, and also One Under Pride with a very electronic remix that it's amazing, and also Sorrows of the Moon, that it's an epic gothic tune. I want to ask you once again, it's very risky album in that time. I think it's very difficult to find a label that put money in that adventurous production. What can you tell me about your memories on Into the Pandemonium? And once again, thank you for that album because I love it.
Well, thank you very much for the very kind words about it. And you're 100% correct. It's very difficult to find a label that supports such experiments. And in fact, Noise Records, to whom we were signed at the time, they disagreed with us. They didn't want us to do these experiments. They came to the studio and listened to the basic tracks, and they said they don't like it. They don't want us to do this album this way. They said we should do a straight album like Anthrax or Exodus, which are all bands we liked, but we didn't want to do a straight album. We wanted to do the experiments. So what was initially a discussion became a huge problem because the record company was financing the album, and they didn't like what we were doing, and it really became a problem. And eventually, we had to go to a lawyer, and it all ended as a legal dispute between the band and the label. It was an extremely difficult production, and the legal problems continued for months after we finished the album. But we did the album the way we wanted to do it. We were prepared to fight for our ideas, and it became our breakthrough album. So I think the band was right to do that.
Luego de publicar el singular Into the Pandemonium, un año después, Celtic Frost daría un giro inesperado en su carrera con su siguiente producción, Cold Lake, lanzado en el año de 1988. Un trabajo que desde su producción es algo muy distinto y la dirección está más cerca de lo que pasaba en los Estados Unidos en la música comercial de entonces, es decir, hard rock con mucha extravagancia, laca, y bueno, muchos coros ahí para complacer a las arenas. Y por esa ruta fue que apostó Celtic Frost, siendo despedazados por la crítica y también ganándose de detractores a una porción de sus fans. Apreciando el trabajo en retrospectiva, le cuesta a uno ser tan sanguinario, tan radical, pero no deja de ser algo sorpresivo que se la hayan jugado por ese sonido en ese momento. Sobre ese capítulo en la discografía de Celtic Frost, Tom Warrior comenta lo siguiente.
For 44 years, and I've done many records, and of course, in such a long time, in 4.5 decades, you also make mistakes. I'm a human being, and I'm very, very far from perfect. And Cold Lake was an experiment at the time that we thought would be interesting. We wanted to have an album that is a little more positive, a little more melodic, and so on and so on, a little more party. But it turned out to be a huge mistake artistically. I think the album is a catastrophe on an artistic level. It has a bad production, it has bad songwriting, it has bad lyrics, it has a bad presentation. We worked with a producer that wasn't really suited for Celtic Frost. So I think it's probably the worst album of my career. It's the worst album of 44 years as a musician. Having said that, the album was released in 1988. 37 years ago, so that's a very long time, and I've learned a lot since then. I've become a much better musician. I've become a producer myself, and I think Cold Lake was probably an important step in becoming more critical towards myself, in analyzing my own work and implementing a higher quality standard towards my own work. So even though musically I think it's a terrible album, it probably made me a more mature human being and a more mature or more experienced musician.
Yeah, when I start to hear your music, I also in a Metal Hammer CD, some compilation, they have a track of Apollyon Sun, and wow, man, that's wonderful too, because in those times I was hearing Marilyn Manson, Nine Inch Nails, Rob Zombie, you know, and you are making this industrial avant-garde music. You are always one step in the future. What is your balance about the actual music in the Spotify era? You are, how do I say it? You are maybe inspired by some of the new technology, or maybe you hate it because you start from the beginning with exploration with machines. I want to know about it.
When we started, there was tape machines in the studio, and you had to buy vinyl in the stores. But as a musician, you're also interested in when you record something, you want to do it as good as possible, and you want to have the best sound possible. And so you also want the audience to hear this. And when you record for vinyl, you always lose some quality. But when the digital format arrived, first with CDs and now with streaming and stuff, you can actually choose to have the sound exactly how it was in the studio without any loss. And I think that's fantastic. I love vinyl, of course. I have in behind me is my vinyl collection, but I have the vinyl to look at it. I listen to music digitally because I love the quality. I love that you hear all of the details. And of course, working in the studio, working digitally, gives you a million times more options to look at your music in detail. And I'm not talking about editing it to death, but it just gives you more options on every level when you record. So we embraced modern technology immediately, and we record everything on computer. We don't record analog. But of course, we also do vinyl albums still because we all love vinyl as well. I don't think you have to decide for either or the other. I think it's very possible for digital music and vinyl music to coexist.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And final question, Mr. Thomas. You you put your biography, your life as a book a few years ago. I want to ask you, what is the most hard episode to tell, to put on paper of your life? Maybe if you want to share us, and maybe what's that episode in those years that you made music with Celtic Frost, with Triptykon, that it's more sweet, more glorious to you?
Well, the hardest episode is certainly that Celtic Frost fell apart on a human level. That was an immeasurable loss in my life. I loved working with Martin Ain. I think we had a fantastic artistic partnership. And losing this is something that I will regret and miss the rest of my life. If you ask me on a personal level, I've made many mistakes in my life that I regret, and hopefully that I learned from. But on the other hand, I also feel very lucky that the audience has given me the gift of being a musician, which was my dream as a young teenager. So I'm very grateful. Below the line, I'm very, very grateful. I've been granted to be a part of great bands. I've been granted to be a part of great albums. I'm 62 years old now, and I'm still playing all over the world. So in spite of some very, very difficult episodes, some very painful episodes, both in my private life and my musical life, I think I have to be grateful, and most of all grateful to the audience who is giving me this gift.
Estupendo, amigas y amigos. Ahí queda la invitación sobre la mesa de la mano de su protagonista, Thomas Gabriel Warrior. Quiero agradecer muy especialmente al señor Rafael Echeverry, quien comanda el festival Grita, que llega a su edición número 18. Y él fue quien nos concedió esta entrevista para este espacio. Y por extensión, también saludar a toda la gente del sello Hateworks, que hace una labor extraordinaria en lo que a la difusión del metal colombiano se refiere. En los comentarios hablemos de Hellhammer, de Celtic Frost, de Triptykon, canciones y discos favoritos. Quiero leerlos a ustedes, y si van a ver a Triptykon tocando el 12 de octubre en la jornada de cierre, por favor que me compartan sus pensamientos, sus opiniones de cómo estuvo el show. Mi nombre es Alejandro Bonilla. Quiero invitarlos a que me sigan en mis diferentes redes sociales con más contenido relacionado. Suscríbanse al canal de Alejandrosis y muy pronto nos volvemos a encontrar aquí para hablar de la música que más nos gusta, rock and roll.